So an incredibly busy week has just flown by in like no time at all. Where are we now? We're the 8th of August, Saturday the 8th of August. It really is the end for us now for the beekeeping season. I haven't even started my honey harvest yet, but that's starting, well, tomorrow I start putting my bee escapes on. So what have I been doing the last week? Well, I've actually had a bit of a break from bees, and well, apart from putting these in, virgin queens into the nukes I made the week before, and managing the last hatch in my incubator, I've been catching up with client work because I've had one remaining client who I worked for all summer on and off. They've sold their house now, and I'm now going to be, as you know, going it alone, just bees. So I've been looking after them for a week, which the timing was fantastic, and so I've been able to get all their work done, all up straight, and now I've got a week or so to harvest my honey. So one thing to talk about at the moment is the robbing issue. I know you've seen other beekeepers talk about the robbing, but this year I've got a lot of colonies in one area, and up the road I've got about 70 nukes plus 20 hives in what's going to be probably my new mating yard next year. It's absolutely unbelievable. I'll give you an example. I went into the colonies last night for 20 minutes, and within 20 minutes of me opening up the hives, making the mistake of putting the frame on the ground, the robber bees were just like literally in a sea over the frames. So I've had to learn how to very quickly make my bee movements and manipulations very stealthy. For a start, you go in down upwind of the colonies. So if you've got a group of colonies, you start where the wind's blowing away so that the colonies the other side of you can't smell that honey, okay? The other one is, what I've learned is, never take a frame actually out of that colony, because if you put it on the ground, the smell directly comes over that frame and then sends it off into the wind. And that's another thing. Obviously pick your timings when it's cool, but it hasn't been cool. It's been stinking hot here, like the rest of the UK, Northern Europe, France, so Europe is all in the 30s at this minute. We've actually got a little bit cooler today, and it's cooler again for the next few days. So that's another thing. When it's warm, the smell of honey travels miles, you know, and it attracts bees from anywhere and everywhere, and all your neighbors' bees and all your bees. So you've got to be absolutely spotless in how you manage your bees. The other thing is, I've lost a few of my nukes, which I thought I would, which is completely normal. So you make nukes, and the problem is I've got one or two that have retained their queens through no fault of my own. Sometimes you just can't, you look and look and look and you can't find the queen. Excuse me. When you're making up that nuke, and then you're sure she's in the mother hive, and you're sure you left her in place, you get to where you put your nukes out, and what happens is they obviously are in the box. So when you come to put a queen in, you take a frame out, check it's hopelessly queenless, or you find that when you cut the queen cells out, there isn't any queen cells because there's a queen in the box. So because you have some nukes in amongst your queenless nukes, your hopelessly queenless nukes, you're ready to receive a queen, the problem is if they're weak, they will migrate towards a queen right colony. So I've got, for instance, if I found to my peril, and I've learned this year, that if you have a group of say 6 together and they're too close together, they don't all maintain in the same box. They basically all go towards one that has a queen. So you'll get one colony that's super duper strong that's got a queen in, that's a completely and utter pain. For a start, you don't need that colony to be strong this time of year. You can't rectify it because the brood that you put in has hatched already and gone. The nurse bees have walked to the colony next door. So you're left with 3 or 4 boxes that are then prone to robbing. So it's like something you really have to be careful of. And what I've learned, the best thing is really isolate your nukes into groups of, well, on their own if you can, but at least 2 meters apart each one. And then there's less chance of the bees picking up on that smell of each nuke, or where there is or is not a queen. So that creates other issues, because then you're thinking, well, I've lost my queen where the hive was, but the problem is you can't find where it was, because I don't note each one as I make a nuke, and I should do, but it's almost impossible to do it. I know which apiary it came from, but the trouble is all my honey is still in my hives. So this is the logistics of making splits in the summer, is it's so difficult to get back into the nukes, into the hives that gave the nukes quickly, because they are basically stacked up with honey frames. You know, most of them are. So you have to forget that, and they will requeen themselves, but obviously they'll become F2s, F3s, and we have this joke that some of ours are F20s, they're so bad. But what I'm doing now is today I'm going round. I'm not going to show you and film it because it's pretty boring. It's just quickly going into most of these nukes very, very carefully with a virgin queen. There you are. She's hatched out in the last day, and I've got about another 10 cells remaining that haven't hatched from the last batch. Now, I did a huge batch. I grafted for about 6 days continuously every night, and I got about between 28, that's 2 bars, and 3 bars, which is 42. Yeah, between 3 and 4 bars each time, and a lot of them hatched, almost all hatched. I say 96% approximately hatched. So I'm very happy. I've given a load to my colleague. I've given a few to a friend who lives about an hour away, and I was delighted he came down and collected some, because it's all about sharing. And if you've got a few things spare, why not let someone else have a few? And these are all, is said to be hygienic and varroa resistant. So it'd be interesting to see. While I'm talking about that, we've had mixed success with the mating on the breeding program. So it's a good and a bad start. I'm almost embarrassed that we didn't get as good a mating as I hoped, but it's room for improvement, you know. That's why, another reason why I'm going to revamp my mating station for next year, because I am pretty sure that one of the reasons why we lost a lot of queens was the fact that it wasn't the acceptance, because I took absolutely painstaking time to make sure they're all accepted well. I think it was A, the bad weather, and B, was the fact that the returning queens were confused. And we actually found, Alicia and I actually found 2 queens on the ground in front here, in front of these hives. So we picked them up, found a hive that was queenless and put them back in there accepted, but we lost a lot. You know, well, we think we've lost over half of our queens, our virgins we put in. So that's why I've had to go back in and check all these and requeen those with virgins. And I'm hoping now, this is actually 2 weeks after, so I'm hoping now that these are going to gap up any losses. But that is beekeeping. You know, I've never had such losses before, but it was bad weather as well. It was directly when the flow was on and the weather went bad and no bees were flying. So I think it was a combination of those things, you know. It's just the way it is. But being positive, we've still got a good number of nukes to work from next year, and we'll be, in a few weeks' time, we'll be starting to do mite readings from those and see if we've managed to find a few colonies that have maintained the degree of resistance to varroa in those stocks. So then we work from those and we overwinter them very carefully, and then we're going to breed from there next spring, and that's how it progresses. It's all a lot of work, but I really feel that it's something we do, and I'm lucky enough that Alicia was over helping me set all this up, because I couldn't have done it on my own. It's absolutely the computer work, the recording, the actual queen marking, everything. It was absolutely brilliant that she was able to help me, because we were working well as a team and getting all that done, and it really, really paid off, because it gave me time to get other stuff done as well. So now we can just not sit back, but we can sort of have a bit of a pause while I get my honey harvest done. And then in about 2 weeks' time, when that's all done, then these queens that have returned from mating and that are laying well, and the ones from our breeding, we can assess them a little bit, start to do some mite washes while the weather's still good, feed them, give them pollen sub, get them boosted, give them everything we can. I'm even going to take frames from other strong mini plus nukes that are really strong, because I can overwinter them on one, but the special ones that are varroa resistant or potentially have the characteristics of being varroa resistant are going to be overwintered on 2 bodies. So that I'm going to have to boost those with brood from other colonies, which actually won't make any difference, because it'll just boost the whole colony and get it into two. So by the time our ivy flow starts in the middle of September, fingers crossed, but we're due to have some thunderstorms as well for some rain. Fingers crossed, excuse me, we will have some good ivy pollen this year and autumn moisture to get the ivy really working well, because there's no doubt that when you have ivy in the autumn, it's an absolute gift from the gods. It really is a huge bonus to be able to have that amount of pollen and nectar going into the hive when you've got bees that are growing, small colonies that are growing, that need building up for the winter, and building up they do. So today's job is going around using, I think I've got 20 virgins left, and I've got to use them all up by tomorrow, because obviously I don't want them in the incubator longer than a day. Then the incubator is turned off for the year. It's all going to be cleaned up. Everything is going to be washed early this year, put it all away, and then that's forgotten about for another year. But it's worked really well this year. I've had one of my best years of queen rearing so far. I made a lot of queens, and I made a lot of queens that have hatched well, and we've had better results. Purely because what we're tending to do now is let them hatch in the incubator and bringing them up on day 8 and 9, and not bringing them up on day 5 or 6 as soon as they're capped, because that is fraught with dangers. The number one being, if it's too cold and you jolt them in any way, often you increase the percentage that doesn't hatch. And I found that is absolutely true. You know, the more you mess around with them, the more you have queens that don't hatch. So I'm going to be doing a video on putting my bee escapes on. That will be maybe tomorrow. I'll do that and publish that later in the week. But it's a hard week ahead because it's hot. The bees are robbing. I've got to take the honey off, put the bee escapes on, then put the honey supers back on the top, which also means I've got to make sure that I'm absolutely watertight when I leave that super, as the bees leave it, because as soon as you isolate, you are isolating that super from the bees underneath, and as soon as you isolate it from the bees underneath, it's fair game for anything else around. If you leave one single crack or anything, so I'm getting myself some Scotch tape, we call it Scotch, but like masking tape, we use this orange insulation tape, and then I go around and seal any hives I'm not entirely sure they're completely sealed, because you only need a little gap, 5.5, 6 mil gap on one of the supers, and you've lost 2 supers of honey, because it will be robbed out with ferocity this time of year. They're absolutely unbelievable, the strength of robbing. When you get those bees going, I think actually what happened last night when I went to the mating station up the road is there was a nuke that had recently been robbed out, and the bees were still in a frenzy. And of course, when they are writhed up, they really go for anything. And I've had a nuke here before, for example, in my own yard here. And I've been at home in the garden, and the nuke has been robbed out. And suddenly the garden is full of bees, and you see them round the windows. You see them round old hives you got stacked up. Suddenly they go into this mode where they, like, whoever's bee in charge in the colony says there's a hive to be robbed out, and they just go and look everywhere in case there's other honey. And that's when other colonies that might be weak succumb to robbers, because they just push, and they eventually will break through. So if you've got a colony that's weak that hasn't been robbed out, go around now and reduce the size of the entrance hole, because there's no need. You can put it down to just one bee, you know, like half a centimetre wide if you need to, because that will stop it getting robbed out. If as long as there's still bees in it looking after it, and you've got a queen that's laying, she's just a bit low on numbers. But if you get a robbing frenzy in your apiary, anything is fair game this time of year. It's absolutely a nightmare. I know if you go onto Ian Stepler's, last week he hadn't got robbers yet because his sunflowers were just holding over that feeling in the apiary. And I find that fascinating, because I know exactly what it's like. And suddenly you go from absolutely lovely bees to everything being complete bitches. And they really are. Because once that robbing starts, the whole manner changes, and you are fighting it. But it'll only last 2 or 3 weeks, and then when it gets cooler, it's not so bad. And then when any weak colonies are finished, they're gone. We will be feeding anyway to try and reduce that stress on the colony. And then obviously the ivy will start to kick off then. But there is nothing around now for us at all. It's stinking hot, it's bone dry. There's a few thistles, there's a little bit of what we call miela, which is the honeydew that comes off the oak trees. And there was maize before, but the maize, if I just tilt the camera around, we've got like fields of it just over there between the trees there. Fields and fields of maize around. You call it corn in America. Fields of that around, but there's nothing on it now. It's so dry that the pollen isn't even worth anything to them. So it's all go, and I just wanted to do this video just to say hi and let you know that I'll catch up with you again soon when I'm doing my honey harvest. I'm going to obviously show you putting on the bee escapes, and I'll go around, probably do a bit of time lapse for that to speed it up a bit, make it a bit more interesting. And then I'll show me, because actually taking the honey off once you've got bee escapes on is really quick. It's just coming in the apiary in the morning, lifting it off and walking away. But even then, by the time you finish, there's still bees on the supers, and you're in and out in 15 minutes and gone. But by the 15 minutes are up, it's incredible. But you have to use bee escapes for us here this time of year, because if you use a blower, you need at least 3 people, because you need to do it and get it done and in and out in 10 minutes. I mean, we're talking, you need to move 40 supers in 10 minutes, otherwise it's a sea of bees. It's just not worth it. And it's hard work and it's dangerous and the bees are pissy and everything. It's just not nice. So you put on the bee escapes, you struggle a bit the day before, but you do it. And I'm hoping that because I've taken a lot of my supers apart in the last 2 weeks, I'm hoping they won't be so propolized up now and I'll be able to lift them off a little bit easier without breaking hive tools. So we shall see. That was a surprise to me. Breaking a hive tool is not what I expected, but first time I've ever done that. It just shows you how fantastic the bees are at gluing things together. So I'll leave you on that note. I hope you're all well. I hope you're all keeping safe, and we'll catch up very soon. And for me, it's just onwards, head down, backside up, as they say, and on with the honey harvest. Speak to you soon. Take care. Bye-bye.